the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District regular meeting to order, exactly 6:30. And we'll start with the roll call.
Right, Manager Lowe,
Here.
Manager Schmaltz,
Here.
Manager Baki,
Here.
Manager Taves.
He's gonna be out.
Okay,
Yeah.
President Anderson.
Present. So just before we get into setting of the meeting agenda, just, Doug Taves did tell me, and Mike, that he, had a funeral he had to go to in Wyoming. So he's not gonna be here, and Mike is not going to be here tonight either in person or on line. He has family in the area unexpectedly, from out west, and so he's going to be having dinner with them. We both agreed that, things on the menu or on the agenda would not require him to be here, so if you have any questions for Mike, we'll just, have staff write them down and make note of them. And, we can deal with that with Mike later. Okay, first item is setting of the meeting agenda. Are there any additions or changes?
I'd like to add
Mhm.
the item on our decision that the Communications Committee made.
Oh, that's right.
So we should add that probably in old business or
Isn't that new business?
new business, I guess.
Yeah.
Sure. Item D.
So item D, under new business, is going to be the work group's report on selecting the communications company. Okay. And then I have something that I'm just going to add to the budget schedule discussion. It has to do with the budget. So we can discuss that item at that time as well. Anything else? Okay, if not, a motion to accept the setting of meeting agenda as altered. is in
I'll
order.
move to accept the meeting agenda as changed.
I'll second.
Right, Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Okay, so the next item is the I'm sorry,
3.
3. Why is that? There's 4 on my sheet.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were saying number 4.
No.
That was my mistake.
No. There's 4 minutes for us to approve. And I do have a few changes, but they're really just word changes. It's not anything major, so I can go through those tonight, or I can just share those with Emily later. Whatever the board wants to do.
If they're just word changes, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else? Okay. Then let's just do it as one. I'll make the motion to accept the consent agenda with the changes that I will talk to Emily about later.
And I'll second that motion.
Thank you.
Right, Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Okay, do we have any visitors? Well, we can't take input over the if they're not present, so we have no one present from the public. So we'll just move over that public open forum item. And the next one is the advisory committee updates.
Good evening, Madam President, managers. In the notes, you'll see the meeting minutes for the Citizen Advisory Committee's April meeting. We had a number of topics we discussed. We had both Manager Anderson and Administrator Kinney present, so lots of good discussion on especially the staffing updates and kind of the continuing efforts on an office space. And then we also reviewed the draft monitoring report. So lots of good discussion, a productive meeting this month.
Okay, thank you. Next item is under new business is the 2024 audit report. And I believe Justin is here, correct? From Abdo? Yep, there he is. Hello,
Hi.
Justin. You're on.
Hello,
All
thanks for
yours.
having me at your meeting. Let me just see if my technology and get that out of the way here first. Make sure everybody can see my screen. You can hear me and see my presentation, is that correct?
Yes.
Looks
correct.
good, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I do appreciate Madam Commissioner and the board for having me at your meeting. I appreciate that. I just like to start my meeting also by just saying a quick thank you to everybody on the Watershed District staff for all their help as part of the audit process. We couldn't have done it without them either. So we do appreciate that. And it was a really successful audit this year. So thank you to everybody involved. But we'll go over the audit results and just get right into it here. We are required to issue an opinion on the financial statements and related internal controls for the Watershed District. So we tested a number of different transactions around paying of bills, paying of employees, property taxes, grant transactions, capital related, and things of that nature, and didn't have any issues that we're required to report tonight as findings related to internal control. So I think that that's a really positive sign, and we did issue a clean, unmodified opinion. The second thing we were required to do as part of our audit is test Minnesota state statutes and legal compliance with those statutes. So again, we are required to do things that the state auditor guide that they put on their website. A couple examples of those items would be timely payment of bills, as well as any lack of conflicts of interest with anybody on the board or in the organization. And we don't have any Minnesota legal compliance findings that we are reporting for the current year 2024. So overall, a clean audit. So into the results just a little bit here. We're going to start with the general fund balance as compared to the future year's budget. Again, on the screen, we're just gonna, what we do is like to do is just compare the overall reserve level to the future budget, just knowing what the reserve level is and do we have enough, and what does our reserve number look like in comparison to what we need to spend or are planning on spending in the future. So again, on the slide, on the screen, we do see the top line is the overall budget, which has been over the past 4 years, and the future years 2015's general fund budget. We also see the total general fund balance as that black line, kind of presented as a percentage as compared. So again, I think we do see a nice increase. Again, there has been some up and down in the general fund. Again, the general fund is more of an operating fund. A little bit less activity as far as dollar amounts goes. The bigger business items that do take place in the project and planning fund. So I'm going to flip to the next slide and just go over a little bit more detail of the general fund budget to actual for 2024 and kind of how we got to that 64% number. So we do point out here that the general fund did get approved as a planned decrease of close to $300,000. Again, so the actual results, again, did come in where the general fund did increase close to $335,000. So I think overall that's good. Again, one thing I'll just point out before I go over some of the why is just looking at the transfers in number in the middle. The board and the Watershed District did elect to move some of the funds that were in the project and implementation fund that we'll see on the next slide from that fund into the general fund. To kind of supplement some of the operational costs and just the overall budget that was approved. So as we look at some of the variances or things that made up the overall increase during the year, again, I think revenues are really comparable to what was budgeted and approved. Again, I think overall expenditure is also pretty comparable. Again, we look at that $590,000 approximate as the final budget approved. Actual amounts were close to 570. So some of the main variances were in general administration and professional service. So again, the big number here, obviously, again, is that transfer in that kind of made that budget whole as we go into the future with the general fund. The bigger activity, the bigger dollar amounts would be in the project and program and project implementation fund, looking at that budget to actual. Again, we see the same kind of slide looking at the budget, the actual in the middle, and the variance on the right-hand side. So again, in this one, the final budget was approved to have a net increase close to $110,000. Again, the actual results at the end of the year, the overall fund balance did increase about $35,000. So I think overall, a lot of activity that went into this, but I think overall really positive. So looking at how we got there, looking at the revenues, some of the largest variations and some of those with multi-year budgeting relate to some of the reimbursements and grants being a little bit under budget. Similarly, those expenditures for programs and projects are both also under budget, just due to some of the budgeting and multi-year budgeting, mainly due to some of the individual lake projects. Again, I already discussed the transfers kind of at length, so that's where that money came from, went into the general fund from this fund. And again, the watershed district did have another loan issuance in 2024, which was similar to what was budgeted. So overall, I think a positive year, again, for the program and project fund. All right, the last slide I'm going to go over is the other type of fund that the watershed district does have, and has been new over the last few years, starting in 2020, looking at debt service. So again, this is where resources are compiled and payments are made to pay back loans that the watershed district has taken out. So we do show the same budget to actual. I think everything operating as expected. There's some interest revenue is the main revenue variance. And again, I think overall the expenditures really close to what was budgeted, with the principal and interest paying back those loans. So again, I think overall 477,000 restricted for future debt service. And we also just show a table here that does outline kind of what that balance is that's to be due or to be paid back for those Minnesota loans. All right, with that, I've reached the end of my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions? Comments, concerns?
President Anderson,
Yes,
I guess I would like to comment that I believe you were treasurer during our 2024 year of operations, and I think you deserve credit for doing a fine job of making sure we have a clean audit with no findings.
thank you. I know we still have some work we can do in the budget cycle, but yeah, getting that fund balance, the general fund balance positive was a real mission over the last couple of years, so appreciate that. Thank you. All right, is there a motion to approve the audit as presented?
I
I'll
will
move
make
to-
that motion to approve the audit as presented.
Thank you, Manager Baki. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Manager Smalls. All right, let's call the roll.
All right, Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Passes unanimously, thank you. Next item is the 2020, yes,
Just a small note for the minutes, the motion should be stated as acceptance of the audit and not approval. Just reflecting that the audit is an independent undertaking of the auditing firm.
okay. Well,
We don't need
Manager
further,
Baki, pardon me?
we don't
we don't
need
need-
further action. I'm just indicating for the minutes.
Okay, very good, thank you. So we can change that, right, to be accept? So-
Emily will do that, yep.
Thank you. Okay, next is the budget schedule 2026. And I'm sure Emily's gonna talk to us about that. The one thing I wanted to bring up around this issue here is having a workshop day, or whatever, partial day for the board to set priorities for the next year. A lot of it's driven by, our progression, of course, into the sub watersheds, but there's other things that come up operationally and also I think from a vision standpoint on things that may not have been in the 10-year plan, or things that have come up that aren't in the plan for next year. And I've missed having that the last few years. I think Emily does such a detailed amount of work on the budget. I think we owe her setting some priorities first so that we don't have to backtrack and add those later. So I wanted to bring it up to the board, think about it after Emily's done with talking about the schedule. We'll come back to this. We'll give you a few minutes to think about it anyway. And we'll set, hopefully up some workshop I like to do it in a full day, get it up, done with. May not take a full 8 hours, but reserve that time and get through it. Or we could do it in multiple meetings with shorter amount of time. Okay, Emily?
Okay, thank you, Madam President and managers. So, yeah, I think that what Jackie's saying could definitely dovetail with the budget process as we had provided in the schedule. And so maybe that could be a workshop in May, and perhaps we can talk about some availability here and get that on the schedule if we want to make it sort of a in the workday sort of meeting. But then, yeah, as we go, the board could, I suppose if you would like to direct staff to create a draft budget after having that workshop rather than tonight. Is that what you're suggesting, Madam Chair?
Yes, that's what I'm
Okay.
suggesting. Mhm.
Okay. Well then, yeah, under that scenario, we could try to get that workshop scheduled in early May or as soon as we can, and then direct staff to prepare the draft budget and then review that draft budget at a workshop in June. We had tentatively on the schedule scheduled to bring the draft budget to the June Citizen Advisory Committee meeting. So if that timing still works out, or we could make it the July CAC meeting if necessary. And then another budget workshop in July, and then try to, if we want to set the public hearing, typically the board has held it at the second regular meeting in August. And that gives us a little bit of time. We can take feedback at the public hearing, have any further discussion if we want, and adopt the budget and levy, at least the draft budget and levy, with a little bit of time to spare before the September 15th deadline to certify the levy with the counties. And can hold additional meetings as necessary, but really aiming for that September 15th deadline. And then later in the year, we set these budgets so early in the preceding year, but these project timelines, things kind of might change over those months. We could come back in November and December and see if there's any tweaks that we want to make. And then the district just has to finalize its final budget and levy by the end of the year. And you can, as I understand it, change the budget as you wish. And you can change the levy if you would like, only if it's lower than the draft levy that was certified in September.
Mhm. That is correct. Okay, so let's discuss having a workshop day that we can address those higher level goals that we want to, not the ones that are already planned, for the Comfort Lake and Little Comfort. That will close out whenever that's done. That process is done probably in early 27, I would guess. Then we're done doing that sub-watershed work. I mean, we'll still go back to the sub-watersheds as needed, but our more district-wide efforts will really kick in. And that's the floodplain work. We're consistently doing that now. But again, I just think it's easier if we have our issues out before the detailed budget is done. Then you're dealing with tweaks. You're not dealing with, minor issues or major issues, excuse me, that is important to one of the people or more on the board. So open for discussion. How does everybody feel about that? I'll start with you, Steve. Management.
Okay, want me to go first?
Yes.
All right, I think that, I think it's a good idea to have, at least an early review, because every year we've had an issue where we've got a lot of changes at the last minute, and that happened again last year, and so I think we need to set a precedent that if we have this meeting, we should really try to minimize those changes in the future. The other thing I'm thinking about is that, rather than having a meeting before Emily and staff draft a straw budget, I'd like to have it right after they do the straw budget, because we're really engaged in a lot of extra time right now. We've got the communication program, the shoreline program, et cetera. And if I had a choice of spending 3 or 4 hours on a budget that could be cut shorter if the staff does a lot of work ahead of time, I'd rather spend that time on something else. So what I'm suggesting is that we have the workshop, but we have it after the first presentation of the budget. And then I know you always have a number of changes. You can bring those changes forward in writing, and then we can discuss them. First of all, we can see if we can afford to do that or whether we have to set priorities. So we get into that discussion that you're talking about to get us through the process a lot quicker and faster. So
Okay,
that's my view on it.
There's an
But I'll-
alternate, that's an alternate way to do it.
Yeah, open it up to others.
Okay, who, Manager Baki, I'll start with you. Next,
I guess
What's
my only
your opinion?
comment is that I would prefer we not have an 8-hour day-long meeting to talk about budget. If we could break it up into smaller chunks, that would be preferable.
okay? Manager Lowe?
Thank you, President Anderson. I think I'm leaning more towards Steve's. I think it'll be more productive if we can see a draft before we meet and then go from there. I'm also an advocate of not having board meetings for the budget conversations because it really gets long. The meetings get long, and I feel like it's a little bit of a distraction from our normal business that we're here to take care of. And then I will also second Manager Baki's point of not having a full day long. It's easier for me to find pockets of time than a full day of availability. But I know we've had some challenges with scheduling lately with the last few strategic meetings we've had with Yanni. So that's all I have.
Okay,
I have one other comment too, is there's no reason why anybody can submit ideas. If you have ideas before the budget's even put together, certainly they can all do that. Things are changing right now, so there may be some new things coming up, and that we may have to think about that the staff may not be aware of and so forth. So it's good to bring those ideas forward as quickly as possible if you're aware of them. So we obviously have an open time period to do that if we want to, so.
okay, so I think the only way to do this is just to get a head count. So if you are in favor of doing a preliminary board review of not the budget details, but I'm talking about programs or projects that will typically where this is gonna fall. Could be something to do with the administrative budget as well, the operational side of things, but more typically it'll be in the programs and project area. So how many of you are in favor of doing a 4-hour workshop prior to Emily starting the actual budget detail? Now, I'm just gonna call you by alphabet. Manager Baki?
President Anderson,
Yes.
can I just add one piece? I guess I see value in meeting both before and afterwards. And, as we try to figure out maybe more efficient ways to work on the budget, maybe both would make sense. Maybe a shorter meeting. You said 2 hours, maybe that's appropriate. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah.
That may be a pre-meeting before they do because Emily is gonna, I think she would, and maybe she can speak to this more than I can, but whether she would value some initial input from the board, then do the budget, and then we can meet to kind of discuss that and go from there.
Okay, that's a question for you, Emily.
Yeah, sure, Manager Lothan, managers. Either way, I think, as staff, I am talking with all the other staff and our consultants in EOR, and I think we have a pretty good handle on the ongoing things and sort of the future initiatives and the things that are being discussed with respect to the strategic planning meeting and the direction we're headed. I think we could put together a pretty good just baseline to go off of. But I also, if the board would prefer to talk about it without having the numbers in front of them yet, I could see that being valuable too. So sorry, that's kind of a non-answer. It's however you prefer.
Okay, so it's up to us. Which is where it always lies. And I did say 4 hours, but if you want it to be more like the, special meetings we've been having with Yanni for 2-hour segments, if that's more agreeable to you, we can certainly do that as well. I just think some input from the board before the budget starts is a good idea. And that Emily just said she's gathering information from the staff. But it is our district. We represent the citizens, and I think that there are things that just don't get picked up on from any other source than us. We all have neighbors. We're all talking to them all the time in our sub watersheds, and there are, I know, more than one issue that needs to be brought forward. So that's what this is for. It's for us to get our chance to get some input prior to a set budget. It's really time consuming to go back in and try to alter things. So I'm trying to reduce that opportunity or that situation too. Okay, so I'm gonna come back to you, Manager Baki, because I don't remember what you said. So is it two?
I didn't say anything, so you didn't forget anything.
Oh, good. Okay,
But
so
my input is, I would be agreeable to a 2-hour preliminary meeting to kind of go
Okay.
over the budget and get an overview of it before Emily crunches the numbers. I think that would be helpful.
yeah. Okay, very good. Manager Loth,
I agree.
okay. Manager Smalls,
So as I understand it, Emily's gonna come back with a list of projects or ideas, but with no numbers. Is that what we're suggesting?
yeah, we haven't done numbers yet. It's giving her that input up front, just as she's gathering from our staff.
Yeah, you know, if you're gonna think about what should be done before Emily does it, that means you need to go through the 10-year plan. You need to look at a lot of stuff that 85% of it will be covered by staff. And then I could spend that other time, the other 85% that I would normally spend looking at all the
Mhm.
boilerplate stuff and think about things that should go, that might be missed if I don't see it in the meeting. So I'm more inclined to have a 2-hour meeting after Emily puts the projects together at least,
Well,
but not the necessarily the numbers.
okay, but we have that opportunity now. I mean, that's always been there. All I'm saying is get some input from the board on some, more visionary things perhaps, or issues that are troubling people within our own sub watersheds. Make sure that we can work those into the budget. And if we can't, then we discover that as well. But I do agree that, we see the budget after it's completed or the draft is completed. That's where we see it. And so if there's things that we want to add to different things, Emily has to go back in and change that budget all around. So I think it's good for us. It'll save a lot of time for her, is my belief, that we won't have to do as many changes after the fact. There's always going to be a few, but there's not going to be as many issues that we may want addressed that aren't included. And of course, what we're going to see is what that costs. And so if we have to take things away, that's fine, but I think we need to include them. So my vote is yes on doing the visit with the budget, the pre-meeting.
For 2 hours.
For 2 hours. Mhm. And then once it's done, then we get it for a review, but we go through this series of meetings that have already been planned.
Okay. So
during
basically
the
what we
budget
would see is the same listing of the budget, but without numbers. So you'd have maybe 4 projects in there. You'd have a bunch of regular programs with no numbers.
The
And then
ones-
any new programs that they come up with would be in
Yeah.
there.
The ones that are all, that we know are scheduled due to the 10-year plan,
Right.
and where we're at
Right.
with that sequencing.
That'll be there without numbers.
That will be there.
Perfect.
Mhm.
I'm happy with that.
Okay. Well, I vote yes, of course, so I guess that passes. Should we do a formal vote or are we okay?
No, I think we're okay with it.
Okay, good.
So we should have that then entered into the schedule. Emily, you have to figure out
Yes.
when to put that in.
Yeah, prior to the first detail meeting. That's right. So how long does it take you to put the budget together? 2 weeks? With numbers?
Have the numbers in there. It could be done in 2 weeks. There's some cost estimates that we gather and looking at project timelines now that we have the audited year-end expenditures. Could have numbers ready in 2 weeks if that's what you would like.
Well, it's not what I like. I'm asking you if you get input from us, just like you do with the staff right now. How much earlier do you need to do the work group meeting for the board?
You know, soon, early May would be nice.
Okay, so sometime between the 1st and the 15th of May?
Mhm.
That sound good? Okay, good. So do you want to send out a poll to all of us and then we can determine that day or that 2-hour segment? Okay,
Sure. Yeah, is Tuesday evenings typically the best time that works for folks, like 6 to 8? I know that Doug has trouble
mhm.
logging on before 5:30, so maybe we're looking at 6 o'clock and Tuesday evenings. Any other?
Do you want to do it on the evenings? Or during the day? I'm asking the board. Doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't matter to me either, but I mean, for our working people, it usually works
Chris?
better at 6:30.
Yeah, Chris, what about you?
Yeah, thanks, President Anderson. I can be available in the evenings on Tuesdays would work, or in the afternoons on Tuesday would work, generally speaking, but
Good. And Manager Baki?
Yes, if you could also, Emily, include in your poll that some other evenings as well, rather than just Tuesdays. Maybe Thursdays.
Okay, we'll figure it out. I'll talk to Manager Loth when he comes, excuse me, not Loth, Doug, I'll talk to Doug. Why can't I think of his name? Taves, thank you. Manager Taves when he gets back. I know he's got a busy schedule where he's at and it's hard for him to take off, so I'll get some input from him. Okay, thank you very much. And Emily, we'll just wait for you to get that message out to everyone and hopefully we can respond quickly so that we can secure that date and then keep on your schedule as you have it here, okay?
Will do. Thanks. I'll send it out tomorrow.
Thank you. Okay, next item is C under new business, 2025 Forest Lake Curly Leaf Pondweed Treatment Contract.
Board president and board managers, I'll cover this board agenda. First, I'd like to thank Blue Water Science for the really fast turnaround they've been giving us. They have now completed delineations on Bone, Shield, Moody Forest and Comfort Lake. They just finished the delineation for Forest Lake yesterday. So we do have the preliminary results, but they will be sending a formal report later. Curly pondweed was delineated on Bone, Shield, Moody, and Forest. None was found on Comfort. Of the lakes with curly pondweed, the Blue Water Survey is used to predict growth. And they only predicted heavy enough growth on Bone, 3.66 acres, and Forest Lake, 139.3 acres, that they would suggest for treatment. We reached out to a number of providers for quotes on the treatment. We only received a quote from Lake Management Inc. They did the treatments last year. You have the cost one? That's all right, I can just give ballparks. The treatment on Forest Lake would be about 28,000, and the treatment on Bone Lake would be about $800. So staff would recommend that the board gives or delegates contracting authority to the administrator to enter into a contract with Lake Management Inc.
And that's just for curly leaf?
This is just for curly leaf.
Okay,
No other delineations for aquatic invasive vegetation have been completed yet.
when will the Eurasian milfoil be done?
Those are typically later in the year.
But that was an early one too.
No, it comes out way after curly leaf.
Curly leaf is just the only early emergent that we, invasive
They-
species we have.
Yeah, so the last one is always late in September or, you know, mid-September.
Yeah,
EW,
the
okay.
post treatment.
Yeah, okay.
Do you have a distribution by lake? Or did you just have total numbers?
We have maps for each lake of distribution.
Do you recall what it looked like? Was there a lot in first, second, or third?
I do have Forest Lakes here.
They did share it with us, so we can share that map.
Because last year we had like 18 acres,
Yeah.
so
I-
it's
I-
kind of an explosion again, so it goes in cycles.
Yeah, historically, it didn't look that far out of the median.
Right.
So we did use a new chemical last year, but I wouldn't say 1 year is enough to evaluate the effect.
I think we killed a lot of native plants on Lake too. I'm just wondering if that was replaced by curly leaf.
The
There you go.
map on the left and then the map on the right kind of shows historic
Yeah.
hot areas.
So it's pretty heavy in the third
Yeah, it's
lake. Okay.
Yeah. There are several areas that they are expecting heavy growth that they didn't suggest for treatment. And those are the areas kind of in in front of residential areas without public accesses or not in channels.
Okay.
That was just due to the large amount they delineated. So if the board did want to treat some of those additional areas, we could get new acres, but I would suggest upping that bottom to not exceed amount, higher than 30,000. As I said, the expected cost was 28 for, what Blue Water Science suggested to treat.
So what are you suggesting? Another 5,000?
That would be sufficient, if the board would like to treat the additional areas, not. That have heavy projected growth, but Blue Water Science didn't include in that, 139 acres, if you go back to the map.
So it has a small amount of curly leaf, but
They're projecting, those areas, the curly leaf growth would get close to the surface or top out.
okay,
So that's what they mean by heavy projected growth. So if you,
I share, so everyone else can see. Yeah, there we go.
So for example, if you zoom in on that map a little more. That area 10 is an area of
oh, you're done.
projected heavy growth not included in the treatment areas. So there's a couple other areas, kind of to the west of 2, that area 2, there's the red dots are projected heavy growth.
So they're seeing beginnings of that,
Yeah,
of
and
the
then,
stands right there, so it's
Yeah.
not singular. It's not singular plants, it's
there's
sort of a beginning of beginnings, yeah, multiple, okay, cluster. Okay, well, I think that's reasonable.
So you're gonna change that to 35,000 then? Is that what you're saying, Mike?
if you wanted us to treat all areas of heavy growth, I would suggest changing it to 35. If you're fine with just treating areas at boat launches or channels, to keep the lake open for recreational activities, I don't think you would need to change it.
Well, I think always, to me, and research is proving this out, is that you, treat them aggressively when you have as few as possible. And, that's been very successful for Comfort Lake.
Yeah, the other issue you get, if you have heavy growth and it comes up, and it's in an area that's gonna bother people.
Yeah.
The harvesters are gonna cut it, even though they're not supposed to be in that area. And if they cut it and it breaks loose in that, then you're gonna have a
Mhm.
spreading problem again too, so,
Yeah,
so.
the areas, Blue Water Science did take financial constraints into consideration. So from a clearly controlled point, I would suggest treating a wider area.
Okay,
Okay, so we'll make that 35,000 instead of 30. And, who wants to make the recommended motion?
I'll move that, we authorize the administrator under advice of council to enter into a contract with Lake Management, Inc. for treatment of curly pondweed on Forest Lake in an amount not to exceed $35,000.
I'll second that. Roll call, please.
All right, Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
or President Anderson.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item under old business.
New business still.
Oh.
You added an item.
Oh, for the Lower St. Croix, right?
For
Right.
the RFP. The education and outreach shoreline RFP.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Yeah, Steve, you got that information?
Yeah, this is here.
There it is.
You don't have it on the screen, do you, or no?
I don't, what memo was that?
April I think who typed this, was
Adam.
Adam,
Mhm.
yeah. I can just read it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So the motion is to move to approve the recommendation as presented by the committee, and the committee, if I recall, after discussion, chose more engineering to be the contractor for the
Mhm.
outreach program on the shoreline, natural shoreline program.
That was the majority vote,
That was majority vote.
Yeah. 4-1. I was the one going for the Thunheim group, but Moore will do a good job. So, they're going to specifically work on that, shoreline restoration project.
Correct.
And so, we'll see how they do before we make a decision on the general communication contract with them. Okay,
Any questions from the board?
the members of that, work group were Aiden, Adam, Julia, our Green.
Green Corps.
Green Corps, thank you, the Green Corps, group, and Manager Schmalz and myself. All right, any questions? Anybody want to ask questions about that, or, we'll just proceed? If
You
you're
want to
okay.
talk about the pros and cons of each or not?
No, I don't think we need to.
Right.
I'm asking the board right now, Manager Baki and Manager Loth, if they have any questions about it, please feel free to ask them.
Yeah, we actually had they submitted written quotes and then we picked two and then we had them come in and make presentations to us for 45 minutes.
Yeah,
And we had a question and answer period and then we had a follow-up meeting, for about an hour to discuss
yeah. an
pros
hour
and cons.
each.
And
Mhm.
the major difference was we thought was certainly more technical but they also had completely integrated staff. Everything could be done in-house from design to production to actually video,
Mhm.
creating videos also. So we thought that two line was probably a little bit better, maybe in terms of broader type concepts. So, but
Well,
they could have done it also probably, but
yeah. The reality is that 4 people voted for Moore and 1 person voted for Thunheim. So they're both very good and that's, I think we're going to get a good product out of both. One of the key elements to Moore was they have this award-winning videographer on staff. And looking at the videography that he did for, I think it was 3 or 4 different projects, was pretty spectacular. And it helps to tell the story in imagery. We've talked about that before. And so those can easily be made to go on YouTube or, you know, on their websites and so forth. And so, and share on social media with a given population. So that was pretty impressive. The Thunheim group seemed to have a better grasp, for me anyway, of doing survey work, pre-survey work to measure measure people's attitudes. And from that, of course, you can really direct your marketing program. And they also had a person with government experience here in Forest Lake even for a time. I don't remember exactly what he did, but he works with municipalities and other government entities. And so that is a very important skill to have, because we have two communities. One is the citizens and the taxpayers, and then we have the municipal governments that we have to partner with as well. So they both had strengths in different areas, and either one, like I said, will do a good job for us.
Yeah, I think that Thunheim might be a good candidate if we're gonna try to have a more aggressive outreach for the office program. That's gonna require working with government and the general population, et cetera. They seem to have a knack for that kind of work. In fact, their positioning statement is that we help organizations and companies be understood by their constituents, which is exactly what we have to have done. A lot of the work they did was exactly in that kind of a description in terms of the problem they were trying to solve.
Right.
So,
Okay,
anyway, we'll see.
yeah, well, I think
Be good.
we need to get,
Go
we've already voted, so,
Yeah.
you know, on our opinion. So we need to, I think, have a vote from the board on moving forward with the contract with Moore Engineering. And there it is, right there, up and on the screen. Chris, Dave, do you have any questions for me or for Steve?
President Anderson?
Yes,
I
Manager Lowe.
don't have any questions. I just wanted to think, who are the people involved in the committee? Besides the two of you?
It was Adam. And it was Aiden. And then Julia is our kind of, how long is she with us? I think
She's with us for a year.
for a year, yeah, and she comes from the Green
Minnesota Green Corps.
Minnesota Green Corps. We've worked with them now for what?
She's got a master's though.
Yeah, 10 years or something like that. Yeah, she's got a master's degree and very smart. She likes getting into this area of marketing and communication.
And she did a lot of the literature searches for us and that, you know, getting background information and all that, so she's been digging in it from that end of it, so which is good.
Mhm.
Who is the one that voted against Moore?
Me,
Okay,
And actually, Manager Anderson's influence was to get more in to begin with, because
yeah, well, I've met them many times at conferences and they talked about getting into this marketing aspect about 2 years ago, I think, or 3, at a MOD conference and now Minnesota Watersheds, but I thought that was very, very smart. Because so many of the smaller districts don't have the capacity to do that kind of thing. And so it really helps, and I just thought it was brilliant. So I was very excited to have them come in, but there were some disappointments for me in the presentation and not following. This was a very narrow, focused project, and so when they didn't address that element, I was pretty disappointed. We have a heck of a videographer though. He's won national awards. And the videos he did for the projects that Moore, we're working on, they were really spectacular.
But this is a very focused project on almost like a product development product. We're trying to sell this concept of natural shorelines, and we're asking people to part with their own personal money. So it's just kind of like a traditional consumer purchase decision, and you know, there's like 7 or 8 reasons why we do natural shorelines, and we spend probably most of our time working on the phosphorus end of it. And the videograph approach to this would make be very, very effective to sell those 6 or 7 other points. And I'll send you the, make sure Adam sends you the 4 videos. They're anywhere from 2 minutes to 8 minutes long. And it's quite impressive how they get at the details to elicit, you know, make sure the consumer is paying attention to the points that they have to know about to approve a dam, for example, et cetera, et cetera. And I think you'll find it very interesting. So I'll make sure you have a copy of that and you can take a look at it if you have an interest.
Now, that brings up a topic that I'll just revert back to the decision we made to have that pre-meeting before the budget. I brought this up at a couple of meetings. You know, when we go in and start working with the farmers, for example, we don't ask them to take any of their money and make those changes because it benefits the lake that they're closest to. And I wanted to know if there were, there have to be programs out there, unless Trump's destroyed that aspect of grants, but there has to be grant money available for the restoration of shorelines. So I really want to see us focus on that for the budgets, because when you go to people and talk to them about the importance of a natural shoreline, but it's gonna cost them $30,000 to take out what they have, I don't think that's fair. I think that we need to treat it like we do when we have approached people in the past.
And I think that's a good challenge to put on Moore, to see what they can find out about that and bring it forward for us.
Well,
Yeah, and staff too.
and Emily, we're looking for those types of grants, and if we wanna be successful, we're gonna have to reduce that cost to the individual.
Or on the other hand, we could take the community grant for $50,000, which the city doesn't normally use, and use that each year to supplement what's going on. That's something else we could consider doing. But-
Well, not much of this is gonna go to Bone and Comfort, it's gonna go to
Right.
Forest Lake. You know, it's embarrassing to have one of our lakes be at the very bottom of the rankings.
Right.
Nobody likes that, and we have to have our engineers help us to establish for the homeowners what that contribution means to the lake. And I'm sure there's a way to do it beyond my ability to do math, but, you know, I don't know what the contribution is by, let's say, foot or however they measure it. But I'm sure that they can do it and let us know.
It's a half pound for 50 feet.
Well, if that's the case, you've got that verified, that's just,
It's published. I don't know what,
okay,
from
good.
a white paper.
Well, I'll trust our
We haven't
engineers.
voted on this yet either, have we?
We haven't, we're discussing it.
Okay.
We're discussing it. But the issue before us is to enter into a contract with Moore Engineering in accordance with our proposal from February 28th. And that is a restriction to the shoreline restoration project. We need a motion. I'm gonna make it, if nobody else.
Sorry, Manager, I wanted to see if Manager Baki wanted to say anything, but I'll make the motion to approve to authorize administrator on the advice of council to enter an agreement with Moore Engineering in accordance with the February 28th, 2025 proposal and in an amount not to exceed $27,500.
I'll second that.
Okay,
Right,
Very good.
Manager Lowe.
wait
Aye.
just a minute. No,
Sorry.
wait just a minute. Manager Baki, did you have anything to discuss? On the
No,
motion?
I'm fine. I'm fine with the
Okay.
decision that's made.
All right. Very good. All right, Corey,
All right, Manager Lowe.
or Tori, excuse me.
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next is the old business. A, 2024 year in review, annual report, progress report.
Madam President, managers, I can introduce this one. So these reports were first distributed at the end of March, and then we gave a presentation at the April regular board meeting. The final drafts are in this board packet. Revisions to the annual report and the year-end review are detailed in the memo in the board packet. And yeah, just a reminder, we need to submit the annual report, and we submit the other reports as well to the state by April 30th.
Very good. Well, we've seen these all before. I'm gonna make the motion to approve the 2024 year-end review, annual report, and progress report. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion?
I thought that the year in review that you changed, Emily, is much stronger and much easier to read, so that was a good change, thank you. Well, whoever changed it, I don't know who changed it, but whoever did, it's much more, much stronger.
No. Any other discussion? No, all right, let's take a vote.
All right, Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
I just have one question. I find these documents to be extremely helpful throughout the year because it kind of summarizes
Mhm.
everything we've done, you know, for the year and for the last 8 or 10 years. So if any manager wants a paper copy, you know, I like to carry this a little binder with me. I have them all with me then when I have to go to special meetings and that. So if you need a copy, maybe we can tell Tori right now, so we don't have to put them up individually.
I think that's a good idea. I like to have a hard copy as well. Any other manager would like that? Just give Tori a call. And she can produce those for you.
Thanks, Tori.
All right, next, report of staff. Administrative,
Water, the water monitor.
oh, I'm sorry, water monitoring, thank you. Water monitoring report, 2024. Yes, do we have somebody from EOR here?
Yes, Madam President, it's Ann Wilkinson.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I made the requested revisions from the last meeting and Steve's written revisions to the 2024 report, but I'm happy to make additional revisions at this time if you have some after reviewing the revised report.
Nothing at this time.
No,
for
I think
me.
it's very well done. Thank you.
Always is.
And I would like to have a copy of that report also,
Okay.
Tori.
Yeah, well, all of the reports.
Yeah, all of
If I print them tomorrow morning for the two of you, and then have them for the treasurer's review, instead of sending them home with you at the end of the night tonight.
Oh, we don't need them tonight.
No, we don't
Okay.
need it tonight.
Okay.
No, no,
perfect.
no,
Just
No,
wanted-
no, whenever,
Whenever you get to it,
yeah,
yeah.
next week is fine, actually.
Okay.
That doesn't even have.
Whenever you have a chance and you're looking for something to do, you can run them off.
But thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Okay, Ann. The water's good in the district, correct?
It's improving. 2024 was an odd year, but we are continuing to follow our monitoring plan to make sure we keep doing our job of improving the water in the district, right?
Yep. No hotspots though. In places we thought we had cured.
Well, you're gonna
That's-
check into that Shields Lake problem, right? We're doing
Yeah.
that for sure.
Yeah. our
So that'll be-
DIY monitoring program for the Shields Lake and also looking at checking in on those alum treatments and Shields and Moody. for the
Okay.
recommendations.
Okay, I think some of us have already expressed before that this is one of the favorite reports to read because it gives you that history. You can really see how much progress that we've made. So just keeping on top of potential hotspot areas is really rewarding when you don't see them, but also using this report for that purpose. But I haven't had the time to spend reading this in detail. I looked at Comfort and Little Comfort, of course, but I do like to do that, and it takes a lot longer for me. My personal schedule has been pretty busy the last few months, and so haven't had that time just to glance, like I said, but I like to dig into it. If I have any questions after this, I'll certainly call you and ask you about them, but as usual, it looks really good.
Yeah, and I think you can't really appreciate how much better it was than what we were getting before we had EOR start coming in and working on it.
Right, exactly.
We had inconsistencies in monitoring, techniques for monitoring, and it was just not good.
Not working, yes.
Yeah, not working.
Yeah.
So the consistency has been very, very good to see. So
Mhm.
thank you on that.
I do have a question for Ann.
Certainly.
Ann, Moody Lake is referred to as a natural environment lake. What does that mean?
Sure. So that's a designation given by the DNR that's basically kind of based on the shoreline designation of Moody Lake. Moody is less urban, less development around it, so that's why it has that designation.
Does that have anything to do with the size of the lake?
Not as much the size as kind of the development and the watershed around it.
Thank you.
Isn't it depth as well? And
So-
aren't they typically shallower?
They can be shallower,
Mhm.
but depth is also kind of captured by different water quality standards as well.
Okay,
So.
Okay,
Dave, what that really means is your taxes are higher than everybody else's for the lake.
not as much as general.
Nothing's
Like-
free anymore.
The definitions are on the DNR website, and you probably, since you're asking that question, you'd probably enjoy reading that. Because I don't get it. There's wetlands basically that if they have water in them, they're considered lakes. They use that same terminology, so. If you're just looking at not that preface, but just lakes. It seems that anything with standing water is a lake in Minnesota. As we all know that they're not, but I think you would enjoy that since you're asking the question to really understand how those tags get attached to the lakes, because they're confusing sometimes. Okay. Thank you, Anne. Now I can move to 8.
We have to accept the report.
Oh, we do, that's right. Is there a motion to accept the 2024 water quality monitoring report?
I'll make the motion to accept the 2024 monitoring report from EOR as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second? I'll second.
All right, Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Unanimous, thank you. Motion passes. Now we move to 8. Administrator report. Well, Mike's not here to talk about it, but it's pretty well explained in his writing, so. If there's any questions for Mike on an issue, why don't you just call him? I think he'll be in tomorrow. And working, or Monday. Okay, let's move on to EOR. Ann, anything else to report from you?
Just short updates, Madam President and managers. In addition to the things we've already discussed, we've also kicked off the 2025 monitoring, hoping to collect some samples after maybe this rain that we've gotten today, but we didn't get as much as expected. And then we're gonna get a lot of rain early next week. We're also have kicked off the Heath Avenue design phase, and Bill is actively working on the modeling and mapping for the flood resiliency action plan. And that's what we have.
Nice. Good, thank you. Okay,
Does the whole board know about the acquisition that happened last Friday?
oh, yes,
Okay, I
Yeah,
just wanted to make sure that that was.
yeah, yeah. Oh, we talked about it at the last meeting.
Oh, okay.
What,
Never mind.
okay, what Tori's asking about is the land acquisition on Heath Avenue that is part of the Little Comfort Lake project that we're doing, iron enhanced sand filter. And that's to purify the water before it goes into the lake. And that's probably about the last project, I think, major project on the Little Comfort sub-watershed. And the closing on that, we talked about it in private session here, I think a week or two ago, or excuse me, a month or two ago. And that was on this property. So we did the closing on Friday and everything is now official. It belongs to us. And that's what Ann was just talking about. The engineering can start now. And so that's in process.
Thanks, Troy.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure that
Sure.
everyone knew about that.
Yeah. Okay, Smith Partners.
Madam Chair, managers, nothing from the wider world, but I'll just note, I just sent on the chat the number of the rule, Minnesota rules, that is the DNR's lengthy description of their lake classifications. So Manager Baki and others, if you're interested, it's part of the scheme for their shoreland regulation system.
Okay. Got it? Everybody had time to write that down? I hope, okay. Thanks, Chuck.
And Emily just sent a link to it.
Okay.
She's better than I am at this.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Next, report of treasurer.
Okay, good evening, everyone. This month we had income of $813,347.30, and the majority of that was from our Bowser grant that we received for the Heath iron enhanced sand filter, which is just closed on Friday.
Mhm.
And we have expenses of the month of $153,147.70. And we'll need a bank transfer then of $203,530. So I'd like to make a motion that the board approve the payment of the expenses and the transfer.
I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion from the board? Any comments? No? Okay, let's vote.
All right, Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Thank you, Manager Schmaltz. Next, report of officers and managers. So, Chris, I'll start with you. Manager Lowe.
Thanks, Madam President. I just wanted to thank, Mike isn't here, but Aiden for attending our Lake Association State of Our Lake Social. They both presented. They always do a great job. And so we couldn't quite compare to the ice heaving event that took place. And we think that may have actually reduced the number of people that maybe wanted to come because they had just been briefed on that exciting topic. But I appreciate their help. That's all I got.
I think it had also a lot to do with the road construction and the fact that it was raining, boy.
Not
That was a good turnout.
free pizza always overcomes.
That was a
everything.
great turnout though, for all those distractions.
No, I think
Thank you.
in all intents and purposes, moving that meeting to more of a social aspect has I think been a great move.
Mhm.
just for
Chris,
engagement, so.
Do you remember what the estimate was? I didn't hear from anybody yet. I know we did some counting on it, but. have
Yeah, we
you
had
heard what
100, we had like 180 people last year. We had 200, so, you know, we dropped a little bit, but,
Okay.
I think it was a very good meeting.
Yeah.
We had Get the Lead Out, which some of the stuff, it's just fascinating to listen to them talk about that. She captured a lot of, it's nice to mix in those softer, more, maybe generally applicable or generally interesting to people versus like hammering the stuff that we like to get into the weeds on. So I think it was a good mix of,
You mean less stressful, right?
whatever you want to call it. I'll leave that up for you guys to call what to characterize what we do every other Thursday. But yeah, it was a good meeting, and I appreciate the watershed support in participating. So
We're just another AIS. To some, oh, that's too funny. Okay, thank you. Manager Baki, how about you?
I have nothing to report, thanks.
Okay, Manager Smalls?
Yeah, I just want to mention that, you and I, when we went to that, Forest Lake meeting, we met Mark Stats, the first
Mhm.
day he was on the job,
That's
the
right.
first day he was
Yeah.
public available, so since that time, we've been having a dialogue with Mike and so forth, and Blake, Roberts, mayor has been very interested in getting us together, so we're gonna be meeting with them. Mike and I are gonna meet with them on, Tuesday,
Okay.
so we'll see how that goes.
Good.
hopefully.
Good luck.
So it should be good. I think
I hope
they're
so.
both very interested in getting a closer working relationship with us, especially after the two good meetings we've had.
Mhm.
They both commented about how great the meetings were.
Good.
So
I think having the new administrator be a licensed engineer
helps a lot.
is,
Yeah.
helps a great deal, and, yeah, I'm hoping we can get back to the early decade when everybody was very cooperative and wanted to work with the district, so that's very encouraging.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have, just an issue here. I guess there's two things. The first one is, the Lower St. Croix meets quarterly, the policy committee, and this meeting is coming up here next week. And, one of the things that troubles me a bit, I wanted to run, by the board and get your input on it. I talked to Mike about it today, and, you know, he understands it, is not too cool with how it's panning out, but he said we would probably be outvoted anyway, but that's okay. I wanted the board to give me your input so that what I say on Monday is what the majority of the board here wants to hear. What's happening is at the last meeting, which I didn't attend in January because of my coming out of surgery mood here or condition, but so I wasn't up for that meeting, but the policy committee presented, or excuse me, the staff steering committee presented to the policy committee something equivalent to a transfer, basically, of interest coming off of the savings account that's set up to reimburse the Chisago SWCD, who is serving as the administration arm of the partnership. Their budget is already $100,000. And so even though this interest right now is at about, I think it's 15 to 18,000, something in that range, but it's not a lot, but I'm not comfortable with a entity that already has a budget established. There's been no indication that I'm aware of that budget wasn't adequate. And so just to have a policy change so that any interest accumulation will go to this one partner, I don't like that. I think that we should keep it in there. If they don't use it, keep it in the bank and just have it keep in, drawing interest and then use it for projects. I'm much more comfortable with that approach. But I wanted to run it by all of you. And I want your input on how you feel about that. I'll start with Chris again. Manager Loth, what do you think?
sorry, I thought I was on I think it should be left as is, as you mentioned.
Okay. Okay, Manager Baki?
Was any rationale provided as to why they made the transfer?
They haven't made it yet. They are putting this forward for the policy committee to vote on Monday. And yeah, I don't see a reason, again, to have it go to one entity. That unit gets, they're a budget line item in the budgets for the Lower St. Croix already. And there's been no discussion of it being an inadequate number. At $100,000, you know, it's not a full-time job, so I think that that's an adequate, it appears to me to be an adequate amount for what they're doing. So that's the question, is do I vote yes on that transfer to have all that interest money that's been accrued to go to the Soil and Water Conservation District in Chisago County?
I have thought on that also.
Okay,
If we were gonna handle that situation here, what we would require is a job description and then a time estimate for the year.
mhm,
And they should be allocating their time against that project number. And so if in fact they're running short and the time justifies it, then they should be, the contract should be changed and ranged to 115,000.
yeah,
Other than not going through that process, I agree that it should not just be sent over to them.
yeah, okay,
It should be run like a business, like we run ours here, and they should do that. I mean, they should be doing it to begin with. By the way, did they have to hire anybody extra on to
No.
do this?
no,
So
No,
what
this-
was that person doing before they came here then?
I don't know, I
So
can't
that's the
answer
question
that
you
question.
should, that's
That's
the
not the
question you should ask at the meeting.
Well, I don't have to ask it,
I know.
because they've got a budget of $100,000, there's been no complaints that that's not adequate. Unless Emily, Emily usually goes to those meetings by phone,
Yeah, I could
whatever
provide
input you
some
have.
clarification. Yeah, the 100,000 is not solely for the Chisago SWCD. Some of it goes to the Washington Conservation District as well. So
Okay.
I don't know what the split is, but it's not all going to Chisago SWCD. But Craig Mill at the SWCD, you know, acts as the fiscal agent, and he tracks his time and bills it out and is very, you know, methodical about that and has a lot of records. He has said at these past meetings that there is a lot of extra work that is required of the fiscal agent, where it's like a little bit here, it's a little bit there, and you know, he doesn't track all of it. There's a lot that goes unbilled, and you know, it's just really hard to quantify because it's a little bit here and there. And so it's likely that the SWCD is putting more time than is actually getting billed, in addition to their board meetings and stuff to be approving these contracts that get routed through the SWCD. So that's just some additional context that Craig had provided to the group. And so, yeah, it's the question of, it's these additional funds that weren't part of the original grant allocation. They aren't subject to the same, you know, process as the WBIF grant. And so it was the question of what to do with it.
Well, I still think that if he had excess hours of any considerable amount, that they would have been coming to the policy committee for an adjustment in the budget. In talking to Mike today about this, he indicated that you had a lot of hours, especially helping them get set up in doing the tracking and all of that, that was never billed out to the district. So I think, you know, we could make a case for that. I'm sure there's others in the partnership that can make a case for reimbursement of those funds. This is not a one-time thing. This is all accumulated interest would go to the Chisago SWCD. So it's just a stretch too far for me. Manager Baki? Do you have anything to add?
Well, I agree with you, absolutely, that if they're finding that it is taking more time to be the fiscal agent, they should be billing appropriately then and make adjustments in the contract.
All right, good. I think we're all in agreement, thank God.
It should just be run like that business.
Well, that's what I will state on Monday then. Thank you very much. for
Andrew,
taking
or
that time.
President
Yes.
Anderson? I don't know
Yes.
if we're gonna get off topic here, but I just, as relatively new to this, this board and the work that we and our partners do, I get a sense that we do things way differently than everyone else, but we all kind of are supposed to be following the same type of taking fiscal responsibility seriousness and transparency. And I feel like, is that an accurate kind of subjective feeling that I get that maybe some of the other people who have been around longer feel? And I'm just wondering why that might be the case.
Well, my own opinion is that the majority of the entities in the lower St. Croix are soil and water conservation districts. They're not watersheds. And watersheds run on a completely different level than soil and water. Most of, if not all of the money that the soil and water conservation districts, it comes from two sources, basically. Their budget process is supposed to include a request to the counties. And the other source is Board of Soil and Water Conservation Districts. That's Bowser. So, and that's, they were established, Bowser was established way before watersheds were. And that was to be the conduit with state to get grants and monies for the soil and water conservation districts, who have been around for 100 years now, I think. It's a long time. So that's
I understand
pretty much-
I understand the subtle differences. I just feel like, with some of the projects that we hear that they take on would not even be something that we would spend any time talking about. And then, they're getting state tax money, I assume, through I can't speak 100% on this, but I'm assuming that some of the tax money, they're receiving tax money from the county and or state money from Bowser.
Right, right.
Yeah,
just don't
well, that's,
seem-
yeah. Mostly from the counties, and then whatever grants the federal government pushes down to the state, or the states create for Bowser's work. Chuck, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, no, nothing really different. I would just say from a common sense point of view, the interest is a source of revenue to the partnership. It should simply be recognized as revenue and then allocated according to the ordinary budgeting and contracting processes.
Yeah, okay,
So I concur with the rest of you.
okay. Thank you very much. I don't think we need to take a vote on that. It was consensus action. Everybody's in agreement, so I thank you for the time. And I will represent us in that area. The other thing is just a sort of a brief thing. I like to go to the YouTube district page to get listen to meeting minutes. And if I've missed a meeting, obviously I rely on that. But I find that to be very difficult to work with. And so I just wondered if there was a way for us to create a singular page or whatever it's called, a folder for the watershed. When I go on the site, I type in what Tori told me to, and I get to a page that looks like it's just for us, but it turns out not to be just for us. So it would be a lot easier for people to access if we could figure out how to make that just about the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District.
We do have a specific page just for us.
Okay, I'll show you sometime then what
Okay.
happens, when I look it up. But anyway, just keep that thought in mind. I'll work with Tori to see if we can designate it for us and make it easier to navigate for people. And that might just be my problem, I don't know. Okay, next is the summary and approval of board direction.
Madam Chair, managers, couple of items. Staff will be in touch to schedule a meeting in the first half of May, workshop meeting of the managers to precede the initial budget presentation. Then Manager Anderson suggested she would like staff to focus on grant sources for homeowner shoreline work. Regarding the activity reports, staff will provide hard copies to managers Anderson and Schmaltz and any other managers that request them. And then what you just referenced of you'll work with Tori regarding the website and the videos.
Thank you. We are now at the end of our program.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Manager Lowe,
All right,
right.
Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Good night.
Night.